It's all right. The wings go right through the airplane.
We're not able to hear now, so please leave a message.
Hi, little brother. It's your big bad sister. Where are you? I'm on my way to Henry and Adele. Hey, look at the makeup on that woman. Which I know is the last place on earth you want to drive a million miles in holiday traffic to be at, and I don't blame you. Have Thanksgiving with your friends. I would, if I had any. Which I don't, because then I'd have to send more birthday cards. This is a lie, of course, because you know I'm a little for pity. Jesus. My.
I really wish you would be there, kiddo, because I am sick as a dog. And I made out with my boss, and the kid's gonna have sex with a teenager. And then I got fired, or the other way around, whatever. Oh my God, I cannot believe I have said this to a machine. I hate machines. Please get rid of this tape. It's nothing. It's absolutely no big deal. I'm fine. I just miss you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Give Jack a big hug from me. That's it, love, Clyde.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick, a Coen brothers stand up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeak. There's so many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
H to the Izzo, V to the Izzy. These repeated lyrics in Jay-Z's 2001 song Izzo refer to Hova, one half of Jay-Z's other early moniker, J-Hova. The song is about Jay-Z's youth as a drug dealer, which remains controversial as it implies to its listeners that dealing drugs is a pathway to success. Though it's not common, such is the case with Jay-Z, as Izzo climbed the charts nationwide and across the world upon its release in countries like Switzerland, the Netherlands, Australia, and Scotland, where it reached number 29. Much like the Billboard charts in the United States, Scotland's OCC, or Official Charts Company, ranks the most popular music by physical and digital sales. While the OCC's charts tend to indicate more European artists than America's Billboard charts, it's not uncommon to see US artists noticed in the land of cakes. Despite being named for a Dutch painter, the Rembrandts charted with I'll Be There For You. Although his name sounds like an Italian extraterrestrial, Bruno Mars charted with Just the Way You Are and Grenade. And even though her name sounds like a royal baby, Lady Gaga charted with Poker Face, Paparazzi, Bad Romance, and Born This Way, among others. Lady Gaga, born Stephanie Germanotta, took the world by storm not only with her music, but also her over-the-top costumes and performances. She even took things a step further, using her celebrity to influence her fans, known as Little Monsters, on human rights issues like LGBTQ causes and mental health awareness. This would garner the attention of kindred spirits, like Elton John, and more traditional performers, like Tony Bennett, showcasing her talents to an entirely new demographic. In November of 2011, Gaga would invite Bennett and a number of other stars to appear in an ABC special, A Very Gaga Thanksgiving, which featured a number of stripped-down versions of her classics, a Gaga interview with Katie Couric, and a scene where she blows glitter on children. This Thanksgiving special was lauded by critics as disarmingly direct, sincere, and unpretentious, which aligns with other famous Thanksgiving cultural classics, like the films Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and the highest-grossing Thanksgiving film of all time, Jack and Jill. But few films capture the spirit of Thanksgiving like our film of the week. Greetings, Starfighters, this is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode we celebrate 1995's H to the Ism for the H to the Is holidays. Dan, what are you thankful for?
John, I'm thankful for the opportunity to do this podcast with you each and every time. I'm thankful for that introduction and that welcome. I'm thankful for the references to one of my favorite Jay-Z tracks, H to the Izzo, V to the Izzy. I won't continue quoting, though I could.
Sure.
And
well,
yes.
I was going to say, when doing these introductions for this current series that we're in, which is going up and down the alphabet for an entire year, honoring each letter of the alphabet and linking it somehow to the movie of the week without just being like, this movie starts with H is a fun exercise for me. So go on. You're going down your list of what you're thankful for.
Oh yeah. Well, and to expand on that, normally I sit here and try to figure it out, but today I just was kind of like along for the ride, and I was like, however we get there, we're going to get there. And then it was like, you referenced something, the Rembrandt's song. Right. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that charted in 1995 when this movie came out. But sure enough, no, that was not the end of the path. So
because obviously I had to bring it back to Jack and Jill for a little bit, which I mentioned on the last episode's intro.
Oh, yes. Well, and Jack and Jill will ties potentially into our next episode's film selection.
We'll talk about that. We'll see.
And yes, that'll make a lot more sense later on. And yes, in the best ways possible. So, John, I'm grateful for that. How are you doing? What are you grateful for?
Well, along those notes, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do these intros because it gives me these opportunities to be creative and to also do something that I love doing, which is just like going down Wikipedia holes and trying to like find those connections and doing a lot of like internet research for something totally dumb. And like, I love nothing more than that. And so like growing up, I was never good at school, but I always loved to learn. Just, I needed to do it on my own terms. And it's like, I love learning things, but to be able to do it in this way and kind of go on these little like adventure quests through the internet to make these connections is so much fun. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for our listeners. We've been doing this for 270 episodes. I don't even know what we're on right now.
I mean, but, I know 6 years this coming January. So as of early 2025, we'll have been doing this for 6 years. So
yeah. And for those who are day one listeners, thanks for sticking with us.
Yes.
All the way back to Short Circuit for episode 1.
I was thinking about some of our, you know who I was thinking? I was thinking about French Fry Phil.
French Fry Phil, if you're out there listening, we love you, buddy. We're thankful for you.
Yes, absolutely. But we used to get great emails, from French Fry Phil, and always enjoyed learning, and also like other people who have given us the little tidbits, like you've mentioned, through our YouTube clips and on Instagram, etc. The people who have said like, oh yes, I lived, like the person who lived in where they were filming My Left Foot, and just like gave us just that like background on that movie that you wouldn't get from anybody else. No. And the fact that that we're just two brothers who, like to devote a couple of hours of time each week to just digging in deep on these movies.
Right.
That we put out there. And that's one of the blessings of the internet, is that we can, and of modern technology, is that we can do this, that we can sit in our, in a shed, in a basement, wherever we may be,
right,
and talk about this from different cities and put that out there. And that somebody, like, we could talk about a movie from 1989, like My Left Foot, that was made in Ireland, and that somebody out there
right
catches wind of that and gives us that information.
It's like, beautiful.
That's a wonderful thing. So that's where my focus is right now.
Yeah. And also if you're out there, much like French Fry Phil, and want to reach out to us, you can email us ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com. Dan referenced some of our YouTube viewers because these episodes also go on YouTube. You can also watch them on Spotify about a day after their release, because that's a separate process that I have to do. But check us out and leave comments. And Dan's holding up merch. That is actually discontinued merch.
Oh.
because it got taken
yes.
down by a certain movie studio that it
The movie
emulates.
studio that produced today's film, in fact. So
That is true. And also, Dan, I am thankful for the opportunity to talk about these movies with you, and also to give us opportunities to watch movies for the first time, like CC and Company. We never would have seen. Never would have seen.
Heard. I would not have known of CC and Company.
And even though it's not a good movie, it is a hell of a lot of fun to watch, and it really gave us a lot of fun times to talk about. But also, it's like, I've seen Home for the Holidays before, but it's been a while, and I saw it today in a very different way than I've ever seen it before. And Dan, I'm wondering, it looks like you've had the same experience.
Indeed. I'm going to give myself whiplash. I'm nodding so vigorously, but yes, indeed. That is certainly, this is not a movie that I've watched in some time. And this is, I mean, maybe the third or fourth time I feel like I've given it a couple of shots, but certainly haven't watched it in a while. And certainly saw it through, I think, more of the eyes that it was intended to be seen through.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, now that you and I are like older than the oldest, of the main characters in this movie, it's, we see it from a very different perspective than maybe like, I don't know, the Claire Danes character perspective, although she's in it very briefly, but yeah.
Well, which was the perspective that I viewed it with at the time, being that Claire Danes and I are, around the same age. Mm-hmm. She was certainly one of my late teen crushes.
Hell yeah.
My mid-90s crushes. Claire Danes in Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo plus Juliet.
Yeah,
absolutely.
At age 19, and I will mention that when I show it to my students, because I teach literature, high school literature, and we read Romeo and Juliet, so of course we have to watch the movie because it's
right.
We have the Leonardo DiCaprio Film Festival basically in my classroom. Actually, this year it's Leonardo DiCaprio double feature for 9th grade, because we also read This Boy's Life.
Oh, okay.
Which was adapted. That movie got a lot more press when Killers of the Flower Moon came out, because This Boy's Life was the movie that De Niro did with DiCaprio that made De Niro say to Scorsese, like, hey, you got to work with this kid.
Right.
And that was not at all in that voice, but and then so we watched that film, and then there's Romeo and Juliet. Now this year, and I also used to have the Denzel Washington double feature, because I would show, I taught 12th grade and taught fences and showed that film.
You also taught how to fly a plane while after consuming alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's for my club. That's for my club, flight club. But the first rule is I can't talk about it.
Got it.
So anyway, we watched that and The Great Debaters, because I do a unit on debate, so I teach a little bit about that, and we watched that movie because I'm like, movie debates will get you excited to debate.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Movie debates are fantastic. So this year, I still have the 9th grade curriculum, but I'm teaching the 11th grade curriculum, which includes The Great Gatsby, which means more
there you
Leo.
Go. And you have that whole unit on forging checks. So
I was going to say, I may throw catch if at some point I find myself needing to like work a movie day in. I feel like I could show Catch Me If You Can.
How would you justify that?
It's a true story. And
okay.
It's about somebody who had skills and they did things to break the law, but then they found ways to use that to help the law. So it's kind of like, the way I connected to it is, it's kind of like the alternate, Gatsby carry on, where it's like, what if Gatsby had lived and had kind of, gotten
spoiler for Gatsby.
Oh yeah. Geez. Yeah. 100-year spoiler there.
Yeah.
What if Gatsby went on to become, go from being a bootlegger to being someone who worked for, with the Treasury Department, maybe, become one of the untouchables and say,
there you go.
I will help you take down the bootleggers during Prohibition. Who knows what could have happened? Like, We know he was great, but we don't know how much more greatness he could have achieved. But, you know.
Well, and that's, for any of our first time listeners, for those home for the holidays heads out there, on this podcast, we do like to, at the end of each episode, theorize how something could be kind of brought back in a different way. And that could be a fun Gatsby thing where it's like an alternate reality version.
Oh, yeah. No, I do that with my class. I always do I'm like, what do you think? A prequel, sequel, reboot? What do you think?
Oh, so you're outsourcing your ideas. You're just like, anybody here see Home for the Holidays? Anybody got any ideas?
Like, all right, guys, we're going to watch a movie this week and we're going to use it to practice character analysis.
Yeah,
and
it's called Anaconda.
Yeah, you're going to let me know. Right. Yeah. Right. So we're going to think about and we're also going to look at it to analyze cultural appropriation and try to determine which culture John Voight is appropriating.
Right.
So
totally.
Anyway, John, shall I synopsize?
Please synopsize.
And by the way, I know we're giving John his proper credit for the introductions. John also writes the intros.
I write the synopses.
John
I write them. I write them, but then I pass them off to you because you are an English teacher to kind of do a pass on and, make any adjustments that need to be made. But there we go.
But yeah. So, let credit be where I'm pretty much here to look good and, think about, throw an extra perspective onto the movies and go off on a tangent every now and again.
There you go.
But anyway,
synopsize away.
Let's talk about it. Here we go. 30-something Claudia isn't having the best November. She gets laid off from her job as a conservator at a Chicago art museum. Her now ex-boss takes advantage of her physically, and her 16-year-old daughter declares that she's about to lose her virginity to some brat named Tim. But what stresses Claudia out the most is having to go back to Maryland to spend Thanksgiving with her parents, eccentric aunt, stuck-up sister, and her stuck-up sister's stuck-up family. The only person she wants to be there, her little brother Tommy, is set to spend Thanksgiving with his chosen family, his boyfriend Jack and their pals. During a harrowing flight, Claudia calls and leaves a message for Tommy expressing her fears about visiting their family, sharing details about her recent unfortunate events, and expresses her disappointment that he won't be at Thanksgiving. She is greeted at the airport by her overbearing mom and blissfully ignorant retired dad as they head to her childhood home where boundaries are non-existent and judgment is plentiful. But positive vibes are bountiful for Claudia as Tommy makes a surprise appearance with his handsome pal Leo Fish, who Claudia assumes has suddenly replaced Jack as Tommy's beau. After Claudia and the boys pick up Aunt Gladdy, they are joined by Type A sister Joanne, her husband Walter, and kids Emily and Zach, who have their own special turkey, Tupperware, and personal reservations about spending time with the family. Walter is particularly nervous when he notices that Tommy is at the house. Essentially, Tommy loves to push Walter's buttons, and Walter is all buttons from head to toe. With the gang all together, plus Leo Fish, relationships break down, get rebuilt, secrets are revealed, and romance is ignited.
There you go.
Yeah, we've got behind the camera in the director's chair, we've got Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
And in front of it as Claudia, the magnificent Holly Hunter.
Double H for our H episode.
Yep. So in total, a quadruple H for this. And she's got as her daughter, Kit, right?
Kit, yeah.
Kit. Yeah, Kit is played by Claire Danes. And then we've got Tommy, played by Robert Downey Jr. Leo Fish is Dylan McDermott.
Leo Fish.
Of course, as the parents, we've got Anne Bancroft and Charles Durning. We've got Steve Guttenberg as Walter. Mm-hmm. And, you know who else pops up? And perhaps a less recognizable name, but should be more recognizable. John Cameron Mitchell as Jack.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true. I completely
Tommy's
forgot about that. Yeah, so Cynthia Stevenson is Joanne.
Thank you. That's
yeah.
the name I was just looking
Geraldine
up.
Chaplin is Aunt Gladdy.
Yes.
We also have appearances from Austin Pendleton, who is
Yeah.
the museum director, I think, at the very beginning. David
Mhm.
Strathairn as a hopeful suitor for Claudia as far as her mom is concerned, but this guy's a real sad sack.
Yeah,
Just a
yeah.
real depressing guy.
Yeah.
Poor guy, but doesn't
And
do himself any favors. Amy
And you feel
Yazbek
that-
plays an
Oh, yeah,
old
sorry.
high school frenemy, I would say.
Mhm. But,
We also
yeah, kind
have
of-
we also have
Oh.
Angela Patton as the her next seat over mate on the flight over, which Claudia is afraid of flying, and she's just like eating chicken wings and eavesdropping. And then of course we have Ruined Childhoods alum Sean Hatosi as a little
Yes.
diner clerk.
Yes, Outside Providence star Sean Hatosi.
Dunph. Yeah.
Yeah, Dumph. I like Sean Hatosi.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see him pop up. And yeah.
And I'm
Dave-
sorry, you were trying to get a few words in there as I was talking about David Strathairn, Amy Asbeck, people like that. So sorry if I
feel like
powered right through you.
I feel like you feel even worse because it's David Strathairn, and I know he has played some more villainous characters, but generally speaking is a very, we always like David Strathairn, he's the husband in The River Wild.
He's the husband in The River
Edward
Wild.
R. Murrow in Good Night and Good Luck, the movie, not the Broadway adaptation where George Clooney is playing Edward R. Murrow.
Sure. I mean, Sneakers. David Strathairn
Yes.
is just all over the place, and
A League
is
of
always
Their
good.
Own.
A League of Their Own. Nomadland. He's great in Nomadland.
And on top of that, I've a friend who was working at a theater where he was doing a play and said that like he is just a delightful and humble person who is not above, holding a door for a stagehand or helping somebody out, and that he's just a lovely person. So
Yeah, and I always like seeing him pop up in things. He's just a great
Always.
actor. I enjoy it. And
Yes.
I always love seeing Austin Pendleton too. He's got such a fun, distinct look, and he totally works as somebody who has worked at a museum. He totally works as somebody who works at a museum.
yeah.
And yeah, he's just a real delight, and the scene that he has with Holly Hunter is just like bewildering and weird. But like, you have these actors who show up for one scene and like nail it, and then that's it. They're not needed anymore.
Right. Well, some of them, yeah, like, I felt like some of them, like David Strathairn's character, for example, like we could have seen him pop up. I don't think we necessarily got what we usually get in these movies is like, the scene where like they go out, where like
Right.
they go to like the local pub and like run into people.
Yeah.
So I felt like had we had that scene, we'd have David Strathairn's character in there again, like maybe
Well-
Amy aspects. Not that it needed it, but
Right. Well,
I feel
also,
like those are the
it would have
scenes
been
where the-
uncharacteristic for Claudia to even want to go out to a bar because she doesn't want to run into people.
But-
She doesn't really want to be there.
I could
her
see
support
Tommy
systems.
or Fish convincing her to do it.
Maybe. But yeah, it's a really fun ensemble cast. I feel like everybody is great in their roles. Cynthia Stevenson as the, type A sister,
Yeah.
and Steve Guttenberg for the time kind of playing against type, which is really
Yeah.
fun to see. And their kids are both played by really talented children, especially the daughter, who's just like,
Yeah.
trying to emulate her mom. And as I was watching this movie and seeing, the complete lack of boundaries, and trying to figure out, what is this movie about and what is the like character arc, and it's a lot of it I think does come down to, where Claudia is emotionally in her life. We see her and she's really high strung, having to fly, knowing that her daughter, who's 16, is planning to have sex for the first time with some kid that she doesn't even really know. The fact that she just lost her job, going
Sorry,
back home to her parents. What's up?
If I can add in, just to kind of throw in a little detail there, she also finds this out. Kit tells her this as she is getting out of the car to get on the plane.
Yeah.
So there's no time to discuss it. Like the cops telling her to move along.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and also it's like, this isn't something that I think typical, teenagers would talk about with their like single mom, but it's inherent in this family to be very open about a lot of things, with the exception of anything that would, and this is kind of just going back to Claudia's like own like family of origin, anything that would deviate them from being like giving up the appearances of being like a normal family. So they're very, open in terms of, what they do in front of each other and things that they say in front of each other. But when it comes down to things like Tommy's sexuality, it's basically we're not going to talk about that kind of a thing, which of course alienates Tommy and makes him feel like he's not part of the family, with the exception of Claudia, who, the two of them have a very special relationship. He calls her Clyde, and, they have their own, shorthand with each other. And, but also there's a limit to which Tommy lets Claudia in. And, there are things that come up towards the end of the movie that even, Claudia is, shielded from when it comes to Tommy's personal life. So it's a really fascinating movie in that way. But also it's, I mentioned kind of like you're giving up the appearances of having this normal family. And I think that a lot of that is like going through the motions of Thanksgiving, which is such like a traditional, here are the things that Americans do on Thanksgiving kind of a holiday. The kind of food that's there, playing football in the yard. They even can't do that in a way that looks like a normal family. And I think that is what this movie really is about, is kind of like showing the appearance, like kind of the guise of normality. Ignoring the things that they want to ignore, such as like Aunt Gladys's, we'll say in this case, eccentricities, because it's not like she's diagnosed with having dementia, anything like that. But she certainly, I don't know if she even would be considered an alcoholic from what we see. She definitely enjoys drinking, but there are things going on there.
Right. Yeah. And it's something that I feel like a script would not be able to get away with now, where in 1995 when this was released, and I also, there's a few things I want to say just kind of on that topic, just like how this is very much a movie of its time, in that, it doesn't give us the specific. Aunt Gladys is eccentric, and she blurts things out and says things and takes the room, and you never really know, like, she is not there. She's in another world. She's definitely kind of got something going on for herself while everything is happening around her. Yeah. Not to be too specific, because this is maybe a movie that a lot of people haven't seen and might decide to check out. It's streaming on Paramount Plus. So yeah, you can check it out, but also the way that and this is where the hindsight, I think, versus seeing this movie, I didn't see it in the theater, but I'm sure I saw it on VHS not long after it came out. I wanted to see it very much. By the way, it was, I think, mismarketed. It was marketed as kind of as a family comedy, as a goofy, oh, look, there's Charles Durning playing, cut from Anne Bancroft making a comment about, oh, your father's organ, to Charles Durning playing the organ. Right. And it's silly. And there's Robert Downey Jr. and he's full of life and energy. And at that time,
Holly Hunter's wearing this big silly coat. Yeah.
Right. And it's Holly Hunter, who we've talked about with Broadcast News, but also in, other films like Raising Arizona, who we associate with more the quirky. Right. Holly Hunter could play those quirkier roles and those characters that did kind of stand out from the traditional. And that is very much what, what we're looking at here in this movie is the idea of what is traditional and what is negligible.
Right.
What are the parts of the Thanksgiving tradition that really matter? That's the core of what we get to in the movie. It's something that, looking at it in hindsight, coming back to Tommy, and that I feel like in the 90s, I remember that being a time when people were, maybe not everywhere and not everyone, but more gay people felt comfortable coming out to their families.
Sure.
And this family does not make it easy.
No.
You are, I would say, especially Joanne, but the parents don't necessarily help.
Well, there's also, a scene where Claudia, and this might have been the time when, like, she's in the shower and her mom's just, like, in the bathroom at the same time, whatever.
Yeah.
And she's basically saying, like, Tommy's gay, Jack is his boyfriend. I think that they broke up and he's with Leo Fish now. Like, and her mom is just like, no, like ignoring the facts.
Just smoking her cigarette.
Yeah. And just trying to let that wash over her and just move on without acknowledging the reality.
And that I mean, not that I myself have experienced that, but just from hearing other people's stories and remembering what it was like to be around at that time, and certainly knowing people who had gone through the coming out process with their families, that was very much what it, what it was, ignoring. Without being too specific, I can think of some examples in our extended family where, it was out there, and just those who didn't want to acknowledge ignored and did not acknowledge.
Right.
So,
I mean, also, and this is right around the time that this movie came out, where there were people that are in our life where it's like, oh yeah, that's his roommate. And that was the end of the discussion. And
right.
It was just like, and it's not like it was necessarily a shameful thing, but it was like, at the time I was a kid, like 11 or 12 or something. And so it's like, a child, shouldn't be, exposed to that at this time.
And I think me being a little older, the messaging was different.
Interesting.
It was not long before this. I want to say it was like maybe like 93, 94 that I was kind of like, looped in, though I would say that when I was, when I was looped in, it didn't come as a shock. I think I was old enough at that point and knew enough that I was like, well, I mean, not the stereotype, but.
Well, and you're like a little over 5.5 years older than I am. So, it's also a matter of like, somebody who's into their teenage years at this point, that's an acceptable thing for that age range to know. Whereas somebody who's 5.5 years younger, not quite acceptable. Whereas today, I have a 7-year-old and she knows all about, people who are gay or trans or
I'm
gender
sure she's got
non-binary.
friends who have gay parents. And
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's just not something that I know about.
Like, it's just definitely, I mean, especially in somewhere like Seattle where I live,
right?
It's not uncommon
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of have retrained my brain because, of course, I was brought up in this, 80s, 90s mentality of like, this is what's acceptable.
Right.
And just kind of like, I've got the voice in my head that's like, why is that even worth noting? That's
Right.
like when I'm like, oh, 2 moms. And then the voice in my head is like, so?
Right. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it for more than a second, it's like, yeah, of course I know that she has friends who have, parents
but
who
you
are
don't
in
think
same-sex
about it.
relationships or have
But-
been in same-sex relationships. Right.
But you don't
exactly.
think about it because it, like people like us, even if we didn't grow up where this was normal, where it was considered, quote unquote normal, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
We've done the work. We recognize that it's not. There's really nothing different about that. Like you're just like, okay, these two people love each other and
Sure.
are gonna make they're great parents, and that's it.
And-
That's the kid's happy.
Right. And now, just to kind of circle back around
Yes.
to Home for the Holidays, Robert Downey Jr., and what you were saying before about this film being kind of mismarketed, I feel like it was also overshadowed by Robert Downey Jr.'s substance abuse issues, which were very present at this time. And I know that a lot of interviews at the time with like Jodie Foster dealt with the difficulties on set with him because he was going through, this was like, peak
There were a lot
substance
of
abuse.
people who stuck, like, I'm pretty sure it was like Mel Gibson stuck his neck out for Robert Downey Jr. quite a bit. I think the two of them became close making Air America.
Right.
And I know over the years, and also like Jodie Foster is somebody who has been close to Mel Gibson and
Right.
has been kind of a Mel Gibson apologist.
Sure.
Which I have a lot harder time dealing with than being a Robert Downey Jr. apologist.
Me too. Substance abuse is different from being a racist and anti-Semite.
So, yeah, right. Exactly. So Robert Downey Jr. Right. And I feel like, who knows what would have happened had people not given him those chances. And
Sure. And and of course now, 2024, almost 2025, how many people are so grateful for him to be like, when he is announced as like Dr. Doom, it's met with like huge rounds of applause from Marvel fans at like Comic-Con. And, it's such a big deal that he's in things. And, he just won, well, not just won, but recently won the Academy Award for Oppenheimer. And like, he has had like the greatest comeback for somebody who was kind of kicked to the curb because of their personal issues. And I know that, his wife played a large role in getting him like cleaned up and like giving him a
Susan
new outlook
Downey.
on life. Susan Downey, just amazing.
know her name. I'm
Susan
tempted to say
Downey.
Susan Downey Jr., but no.
Right. She's not a junior, but also it's like, first, and he always thanks her at every award ceremony and acknowledges her all the time. And it's just like, yes, that is what this is all about. And seeing him in a movie like this is really incredible. And to see what somebody with that kind of talent can do despite their issues. And also it's a testament to Jodie Foster's directing, I think, to,
Yes.
get this performance out of him, because I think that he does an incredible job at Home for the Holidays. And even though you can see how strung out he is, like his eyes are just glazed over, but it also in a way works for his character. Somebody who is probably just very stressed out and masking, all of the things about them that they don't want people to recognize, and, covering all of that with wit and being jovial and fun and quirky and, having to deal with a lot of these challenges, because this is a character who likely has a lot of internalized trauma because of his sexuality and having especially to be around his family. He's there for Claudia. He's not there for anybody else. And also he has this ulterior motive to get her together with Leo Fish, which, if we can just celebrate Dylan McDermott for a second, it's like he's so perfectly cast in this, because he's just like, this cool hunk. and
I
you're
I
rooting
also,
for him. Yeah,
I felt like watching the movie this time, he felt very symbolic. Like his character,
yeah,
of course, felt very symbolic, and the fact that he was just like this seemingly perfect guy who kind of had the similar anxieties about family, but kind of
sure,
has got it all figured out. And the name of fish, like the other fish in the sea type thing,
sure. Mhm.
that there's that all
Yeah,
works out. But yeah, that and you make an interesting point though about the Tommy character is having been closeted for how long, for who knows how long,
yeah,
and that just creates trauma, that having to mask your true self and having to really
hmm
be mindful of your behavior.
big
and
time.
and then I want to call out, like, the script for this, I feel like there are times where I really like it, and there are times where I'm like, okay. But one line that Joanne has that just, it hurts, is when
hmm
she says to him, like, she's like, I have friends in Boston,
Oh
you
yeah.
know
So
which,
right,
yeah, she doesn't
essentially,
live anywhere near Boston.
yeah,
And
she is the idea of anybody who knows her knowing that she has a gay brother is for her because she is a lot like her mom. Whereas like, the worst parts of her mom, like
yeah,
keeping up the appearances is so important to her
yes,
and uh is not in any way empathetic. Whereas um I feel like the mom is sympathetic but not empathetic.
right.
Um, when she catches on that Claudia loses her job, she's like, "Let us help, let us help, let us help." She's not saying just like, "Ooh, I understand that you're going through a lot. Just know that I'm here." Like it's just like she instantly goes into, "We can give you money." Da 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 da.
Yeah,
And it's a big difference. But Cynthia is very similar, and I feel like a
Joanne.
lot of sorry, Cynthia Stevenson,
Yeah.
Joanne is very similar, especially in the scene where Claudia goes back to Joanne's house to bring back like the Tupperware and
Oh,
everything, and she's like
yeah.
working out in the basement, and she's fully decked out in all of the like trendy workout gear.
Whatever Lululemon was in 1995.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her daughter is, also dressed that way, kind of on the side, but they're in an unfinished basement. And so it's like I feel like that is so symbolic of who these people are, where it's like as long as their shell is intact, the rest of their surroundings will like kind of follow along in other people's eyes. And
Oh,
major
yeah.
shout out to the people for everybody who did set design
Oh,
and environmental design for this movie, because it is so perfect. The kitchen in the parents' house, like everything is dialed
yeah.
in.
And that brings me to a point that I want to throw back to,
Mhm.
that I thought about when we were talking about the football,
Yeah.
and like the whole thing with their playing football in the yard and like trying to force these Thanksgiving traditions. They
Mhm.
don't have a big yard.
No, it's
It's
tiny.
like a Baltimore. They're in
Yeah.
Baltimore, right? Or they're like near
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Mhm.
So like they don't have a big yard. They are trying to play this football game, and that's the thing with the design of this house too. Is first of all, it feels lived in,
Right.
and it feels crowded.
Mhm.
Like the more people you put in there, the more crowded it becomes, which is added to by Joanne and family bringing their own turkey. It makes me
Yeah.
think of the power eating from Parenthood,
Right. Yes,
right? Except they're
absolutely.
not bringing different food; they're just bringing their own turkey.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sure. And yeah,
which
you're
which
totally
which
right. The
which
front
pays off.
yard is perfect for this whole idea of what
Oh,
they're trying to accomplish. It's
it's
wonderful.
so it's so cramped, but it's also like believable. It's not one of those things where it's like, I don't know, how do these people have this house? Another point I want to make just to the artistic direction, and this is such a minor thing, but I actually wrote it down towards the end when you see Claudia's looking out the window and Leo is getting into the car, and
Mhm.
Anne Bancroft is out there, and there's like a dusting of snow. There's
Sure.
like maybe an inch to 3/4 of an inch of snow. And just being from the Northeast
Hmm.
and being familiar with like that type of snowfall coming like around
We don't get
Thanksgiving
that in the
weekend,
Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
it looked, but I also looked at it and I was like, my God, that is spot on. Like, yes, morning after like the Thanksgiving weekend, like that
Mhm.
level of snow. I was, it's perfect.
Well, shooting
Um,
on location in Baltimore
mhm.
really worked for this.
Yeah.
And yeah, you really feel it. You feel it big time. Also,
And yep,
quickly got to
yep,
acknowledge, I
yep.
mentioned Short Circuit as being our first episode before, starring Steve Guttenberg.
Of course.
Yeah, man, Steve Guttenberg, shout out, did an awesome
Of
job.
course. Yes.
As Walter. You totally buy him as the like, he has a dietary restriction. It's just, I think it's just like a cholesterol thing, but it's like, that's the reason why they bring their stuff, is just because it's like slightly healthier than the things that would be there. I don't know.
Yeah. Like it's an organic turkey, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Whatever the 95 version of, what that kind of eating would be classified as. Yeah, probably like low fat. That would have been like 95.
Like low sodium.
Right.
Right. But like also with Joanne, and also like that brings it back to like, it's about labels and about like the marketing and what's on the outside. And with Joanne, what I came away from that scene with, where she's exercising and she says, and she has they have that great conversation with Claudia where she's like, if I met you on the street and you gave me your number, I'd throw it away.
Dan, when you just said that, it like gave me like the willies. Like I got
That-
actual chills just thinking about like how cutting that is.
But
And-
Joanne,
Yeah.
and then she's like, no, let me go back to this, like her Stairmaster, because she's like, it's the only thing I do all day that I like.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like Joanne, of course Joanne is miserable.
Yeah.
Like Joanne doesn't feel happy. And I think that Joanne can fool herself into thinking she's happy until Claudia and Tommy, two people who very much follow their whims and follow their, like Claudia gets pregnant when she's a teenager,
Right.
and has a kid and lives in Chicago, does the single mom thing, and like she and Kit definitely have that more like friendly relationship where it's like these two have been through it together.
Yeah.
So there's that bond that's different from your typical mother-daughter. And I'm sure Joanne has thoughts about like, my daughter is never going to be like my niece.
Sure. Yeah.
So we get that, but like she's miserable because she sees Tommy and Claudia like seemingly get away with untraditional choices, and she doesn't realize like they don't get away with it. Like they do suffer the consequences for those like untraditional choices, and you really get that like the grass is always greener sense, which by the way I think leads nicely to like to the themes of this movie that I picked up on much more than before. And I think that what this movie really does very nicely, and similar to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but yet different, is that message of not just appreciating I mean, there's messages about family. I wrote down a few things here. So basically in this movie, everybody, like the people who are miserable are the people who are doing what they quote unquote think they should do.
Right.
And
That's
not
true.
just,
Yeah.
but yet also, and then there's also that message of like, your family is your family and you're stuck with them, and you need to find other people. You need to find those other people to, first of all, let you know that you're not crazy and that it's everybody deals with this. But also it's kind of like that misery only lasts until it's kind of like you have to, it's where the ignoring comes back in maybe a slightly healthier way, where at a certain point you focus on what you have and what's in front of you and appreciate what that is, and not live in the past,
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it back to, bring it back to The Great Gatsby here, as Nick tells Gatsby, you can't relive the past.
Right.
And we shouldn't wait till old age
Mm-hmm.
to discover these things. I think that, there's some lovely dialogue between Charles Durning and Holly Hunter around this. And
Yeah.
And looking at it now in my late 40s, mid to late 40s, that is, it's like a few things kind of hit me about this. And like when he's like, when he says there's never enough time, or I forget if maybe Anne Bancroft says that, but when there's never enough time. And he talks about like the best moment of his life being like 10 seconds,
Right.
in this moment with his family. So I felt like there was so much more to this movie than I had ever seen before.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. Charles, you mentioned Charles Durning. I feel like he was really well cast. The moments that he kind of has his like little one-on-one times, like they're really impactful. The phone call that, when he answers the phone and it's Jack after he has learned, I won't spoil what happened, but like he has this moment with Jack that is like, he's doing the best he can. And he's kind of like fighting through the way that he's been kind of programmed his whole life to kind of say something that's a little different. And, those little moments, they make a lot of sense when he's watching the films in the basement.
Yeah.
You get some really great Charles Durning moments. I also want to celebrate the great Geraldine Chaplin,
Yes.
who we talked about in our Nashville episode. And,
Yes.
of course, teaming
Yes.
up again with Robert Downey Jr., having been in Chaplin.
Yes.
And Robert Downey Jr. having played Chaplin. What a wonderful way to kind of reunite them after, was Chaplin 92, 91,
Yeah.
something like that. And
92.
So this is just a few years later. And I think that also there were some moments that I feel might have been forced for her to kind of fit into like the trailer, farting when she gets into the car. Like that seems like I didn't watch the trailer recently, but like that seems like a trailer moment.
No,
to show like quirky family comedy kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And she, reveals a long kept secret, like let's say a 40-year secret. And the way that is dealt with this family, where they're just like, we're just going to pretend we didn't hear that kind of a thing, is
Gladdy being Gladdy.
Right. Even though it's rooted in the truth, that's not important, because what the vision is of their family is more important than acknowledging something that happened 40 years ago that maybe has been very transformative for Aunt Gladdy's life moving forward. She is, I guess you would call it like a spinster. She's got her plants. She leaves her door unlocked. She's got a untrustworthy landlord. She gives, by all accounts, quirky.
She gives lamps away.
She gives lamps away. That's one of her things. And, of course that kind of comes back in a kind of cute way at the end, but yeah.
I was gonna say, like, the lamp thing is like, we can keep that.
Yeah.
Because that pays off.
That pays off in a nice way. But also just like Geraldine Chaplin, I felt was really well cast in this. And, until recently, I don't think I would have been aware of like who she was and, where, how far back her legacy really goes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really until watching Nashville, when we did our last series on the 50 states, that I really got to appreciate her sensibilities as a comedic actress in a way that Charlie Chaplin, her father, you know, kind of paved the way for, but also done in a completely different way. She is so great at verbal comedy, whereas Charlie Chaplin is quite the opposite. And, you know, when we did our episode on Nashville, you know, if you're listening to this episode, you'll know that each episode starts off with like a little audio snippet from the movie. And I used one of her moments from Nashville, because even though she's not one of like the country singers, she's kind of one of the people that makes the like connecting threads between the performers and things like that. But the way that she performs and improvises and delivers lines, and you know, she just really sells it in a way that feels effortless. And to play this, I guess we could just say, eccentric aunt figure that I think is mostly ignored, even though people like Claudia and Tommy and Leo Fish like show a little bit of compassion for her. More Leo Fish than anybody else.
Yeah. But yeah,
like walks her to her door after they drop her off at home. And
does Joanne even, is there any?
I don't think that she's even acknowledged by Joanne.
No, of course not. No. Gladys definitely represents a diversion from the norm.
Exactly. So anyway, that is to say, Home for the Holidays, give it a watch. It is really special. And I think a wildly overlooked film when it comes to holiday classics. It is a shame that it was surpassed financially by Jack and Jill, the highest grossing Thanksgiving film of all time, believe it or not.
Wow. Yes.
A fun fact that I discovered in writing the intro for the episode. But of course, we need to mention this was adapted from a short story. I can understand why Jodie Foster, you know, this is her second film as a director. I can understand why she would be drawn to it. Somebody who has dealt with, you know, her sexuality and coming out, and you know, this Tommy character clearly having you know, some through lines with her. And also I'm sure that there's a lot that she saw in herself with Holly Hunter's character Claudia. You know, I am always pleasantly surprised when I see Jodie Foster, you know, doing something where I'm just like, damn, yep, nope, she's good. Because like you said, there are those conflicting feelings because of her allegiance to Mel Gibson. Right. And which is kind of like an unforgivable person in the things that he's done and said. And for Jodie Foster, it's, you know, like, you know, her performance in Naiad last year was really great.
Yes.
And you know, she totally deserved everything that she got for that. And also, and this is something that we're going to talk about on our next episode, but the most recent season of True Detective, she was fantastic in that. I don't remember if she won the Emmy or was nominated. Did that even happen yet? I don't remember exactly. Oh, no, that was the last Emmy series. And if she didn't win, she was definitely nominated. She may have won. She may have won.
Possibly.
I'm not going to look it up. But yeah.
Well, and also just to note, she had not yet come out in 19.
True.
She didn't actually really publicly come out until 2013.
That is true.
But I mean, of course, so this was certainly something she's working through. And, you know, to say that she probably saw some of herself in both Tommy and Claudia, and certainly saw other people in her life as Joanne's.
Yeah.
Like that, it does make a lot of sense. And I'm trying to remember if I definitely saw Little Man Tate, and I remember liking it. That was her first directorial. It was her directorial debut. I forget what she directed. Oh, Money Monster. I didn't see that one.
Money Monster, I felt like was a more interesting premise and a great trailer than it was like a great feature, you know?
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of the
I feel
impression
like
I got.
George Clooney was well cast as this, like, financial television show host,
Yeah.
type of person. I thought that he was really good in that. But yeah, I didn't think that it necessarily worked as a full feature. Anyway,
Good to know.
but I mean, I saw it when it first came out. I haven't seen it since, so who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it holds up better. But
Perhaps.
so yeah, adapted from a short story. Dan, what kind of future would you see for Home for the Holidays?
I feel like this is the type of movie that tells a story that is always relevant and that you can retell this story without remaking Home for the Holidays.
Mm-hmm.
I could potentially see, I didn't go back, I didn't read the short story, but going back to the source material and seeing, maybe this would make a fun play. Like, it looks like it definitely functions. It has the 3 acts and you could base it in one setting,
Right.
and it has like the right cast where I feel like it would work as a play. Probably not a musical.
No, I don't think so.
But I don't know exactly like what's the audience for that and like why you would stage it as a play. Other than that, you could.
Sure.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I feel like just kind of sharing it with people and rating it on, going on Letterboxd and rating it and just telling advising people and saying like, hey, especially right now, Thanksgiving is coming up, and some people might be really struggling for ways to find like the gratitude in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think this movie, as somebody who is in kind of that a similar state, and this movie put things in perspective, and I think it just could be useful in terms of that. I don't know that there's anything. I mean, you could do a sequel and you could catch up with these characters these years later, as as Claudia is the grandmother welcoming home her daughter, and maybe Leo Fish is around, maybe Tommy and Jack are they're still together, maybe they have kids. I don't know. I don't know exactly like what the purpose is, unless you wanted to like kind of update, like take the same characters and make a movie that's about the present. But I feel like trying to include any contemporary issues or politics or things like that just will cloud the message. I think it's much simpler this way and much more effective to just tell this story and show, look at it as a time capsule and say like, yeah, in the 90s, a lot more people felt this way about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have I have no brilliant ideas. I put it back out in theaters and actually market it as a drama.
If you do a re-release and then try to get it to make enough money that it surpasses Jack and Jill as the highest grossing Thanksgiving film, maybe that's the move.
Well, and if you market it with that as the goal.
Yes.
And you say like, we are maybe Paramount. Listen, Paramount Pictures did Home for the Holidays and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Put them both back in, and just be like, at least one of these movies.
Then you're splitting the vote.
Release them as a double feature.
Okay.
I got nothing else. John, what's your idea?
Well, even though you claim that it wouldn't be a good idea, I think that a sequel would be appropriate. And I would like to see something where Kit is planning a Thanksgiving dinner, a less traditional Thanksgiving dinner. Something, let's say that she's still in Chicago. She's the center focus of this. Claudia, maybe is kind of like, she wants to do it with her mom. I don't think that they need to necessarily be like, Kit has kids now or anything like that. Like maybe she does, but it's not, I don't think like necessary. And also if she does, they'd be, older. So even if she wasn't like a teen mom, let's say she had a kid in 2000, the kid would be 24 years old. So it's like, still an older kid if there was to be one. But maybe it is kind of the conflict of like, who from the family actually does get invited because of what I'm sure would be political differences now between Joanne and Walter and their kids. Steve Guttenberg and Cynthia Stevenson are obviously much older now. This movie's 30 years old, just about. And so, when you have, what were their names? Like Zach and Emily or something like that, their kids, Emily and Zach, that's what it was. To have them, having grown up in what I'm sure was a more conservative household, I feel like the issue of somebody's sexuality wouldn't necessarily be the same type of issue as it was in Home for the Holidays, but maybe it's just more of a difference of how do we come together as a family when we are so different in our ideologies as humans, rather than kind of like, the original in this case is more about, the appearance of family and what it means to be family. This is kind of like what it means to be family in the context of where we are in our, society in this country.
So maybe sorry.
And also it's like what it means to celebrate Thanksgiving, because Kit would certainly be somebody who would be outspoken about the origins of Thanksgiving. And, maybe her son is, her son's father is, indigenous, and that creates a whole other thing. And it's like, they're trying to redefine what it means to celebrate Thanksgiving. So that's just where my head was at. Of course it's a shame that we wouldn't have Charles Durning or Anne Bancroft or Geraldine Chaplin, but, so it goes. And, that's where my head's at.
It was just kind of like brought to mind, and like this does not sound very similar, but in talking about Thanksgiving movies, Pieces of April, also a Thanksgiving movie.
Pieces of April is a Thanksgiving movie. I mean, it's an indie. It doesn't like the aside from that, it's the daughter hosting the Thanksgiving dinner. No other. I went to an advanced screening of that, and Oliver Platt was there. Oh, doing like a little Q&A, which was cool.
Sweaty Law.
Yeah.
All right.
Also an original Flatliner.
Okay. Yeah. Facts. Man. Love Oliver Platt. So, okay. Yeah. You know what? I feel like I think that setup and I think the drama of the dynamic of Kit and Claudia trying to work together. Yeah. I like that.
I don't think Leo Fish should be there at all. No. I think that's something that, fizzled out. I think that it would be cool to have Tommy and Jack, be part of it. John Cameron Mitchell rules, and Robert Downey Jr. I think that the two of them together again would be a lot of fun.
Would love it.
Yeah.
Would love it. John Cameron Mitchell, I'm a huge Hedwig and the Angry Inch fan.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and of course, John Cameron Mitchell's like other on the Good Wife, John Cameron Mitchell's character on that, loved him in that. And so I'm feeling like I'm seeing a lot of potential in the whole like do we invite Aunt Joanne? Do we invite the cousins?
Yeah.
Like, do we have like, where is like some, do we have the question of sexuality? Is there like is Zach maybe non-binary? I don't know, but like doesn't feel, but feels kind of restricted. I like, who are these people now? So that,
Right.
yeah, no, that raises, I think I'm personally like I don't want to watch that right now.
No,
Yeah,
understood.
but no, I think
Absolutely.
that would make, I think that I
And there was that movie with Ike Barinholtz and Tiffany Haddish, The Oath, which I believe is about a Thanksgiving dinner where
Yes.
it's essentially like like talking politics and a blue-red situation.
right, and I think there was wasn't there another movie with Salma Hayek and John Lithgow where it was kind of a similar, I don't think it was Thanksgiving. Beatrice's at dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I never saw it.
I never saw it either, but I felt like that was kind of about a someone conservative and someone who immigrated to this country, having, so like that,
Sure.
that type of thing. But
Yeah.
now would your Home to the Holidays sequel be comedic, or how would you market it?
Well, comedies don't really get made much anymore. So I feel like, kind of going in the more dramedy direction makes a lot of sense. Because comedy, I don't know, this movie, Home for the Holidays, is technically a comedy, but like it's so much more than that. And I don't feel like it, to label it just in one genre makes sense.
No. I mean, yeah.
I feel like it would fit in the
Comedy
same
drama.
style as Home for the Holidays.
And would you open it with a Rusted Root song?
Absolutely, yes.
Jodie Foster does with
Yes.
Rusted Root's cover of Evil Ways.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I totally forgot
Me
that this
too.
movie started with that, and I got so hyped once it kicked in. I was like, "Oh yeah,
His
Rusted
voice,
Root.
that undeniable voice.
You know you got to change.
Well, our dear listeners, if you have ideas on how to bring back Home for the Holidays, email us ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Rate us on Spotify. Watch it on all the things that you can watch it on. Dan, I is our next letter of the alphabet. What are we doing for our I movie?
So we will be going to the movie Insomnia. We will be going to the land of the midnight sun, and we will be talking about the movie Insomnia, as originally made in Norway, 1997, by Erik Skjoldbjerg, starring Stellan Skarsgård, and famously remade in 2002 by Christopher Nolan, starring Jack and Jill's own Al Pacino, Robin Williams, Martin Donovan, Hilary Swank, Maura Tierney, Nikki Katt, and I'm looking forward to talking about that one.
Yeah, Dan, what do you want our focus to be? The original or the Christopher Nolan American remake?
Well, I have started looking at the original because I've seen the remake a few times. So I do think my plan here is to kind of go, because I can't watch anything in one sitting anyway, is
Sure.
to go back and forth between the two. But I've seen the remake enough times that I feel like I'm watching the original and thinking like, oh yeah, that reminds me of that.
Got it.
Yes.
Cool.
So, I mean, have you seen either before?
I've never seen the original. I've only seen the Christopher Nolan, one of Christopher Nolan's overlooked early films.
We'll talk about this on the next episode, but yes, like that cannot be overstated. So such an underrated film of his. So, but we'll be talking about Insomnia and I'll have a few tidbits to throw in because I've been listening to Al Pacino's memoir on audiobook. So it's great because of course he is the one reading it or telling the stories. And it's been a wonderful listen so far. So All things Al Pacino.
All things Al.
And Dunkachino, which is what he does in Jack and Jill.
Of course. Well, Dan, as you are heading H to the Isome for the H to the Is holidays, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.